stuck with me. Hope that will be okay. But Mr. Panetta is doing well and really appreciates everybody's concerns and regards that have been given this week. So thank you for that. I would like to start, first of all, Dr. Fujimoto gave some great points about some of the ingredients that make bioclusters successful, and those are true worldwide. They are true in America, they're true in Japan, and from what I have already gathered here in Korea, they are true here. So we will talk about those a little bit, and I welcome conversations after this presentation about those. And my translator friend, if I'm going too fast, she can just tell me, but I think we're okay. So really, when you look at a successful life science ecosystem or cluster, and I'm not talking about an entire country, really the smaller clusters that exist in Japan, in the United States, and here in Korea, there are common elements that are essential for them to work. And there's a lot of ways to look at them, but the way we look at them is world-class academic and research institutions, a pipeline of talent, government and elected official support, access to capital, that can be government and non-dilutive capital, but also private and public dilutive capital, service sector providers that can support the industry well, and a collaborative environment. So, and I would add one more, which would be facilities. The iPark facility is incredible, and it does not happen with investment into world-class facilities and an environment that is conducive to discovery. With that in mind, I would say of these issues, or of these items, in my opinion, geography and the talent are the most important. So geography is not on here, but it is the facilities, it's the transportation, it's good living conditions for your smartest and brightest leaders. In the United States, it's a little different than Korea. We kind of have our clusters, our world-class clusters on the coasts, along the water, on the East Coast and the West Coast. In Korea, it's more from Seoul outward, but it's the same concept. The concept is where you can have the brightest minds want to live and want to work. It is a very key part of a cluster. So there are no biotech clusters in the middle of the country in the United States or Australia or other parts like that, because the people will not live there. The scientists, the leaders that make this so essential. So outside of the things that we can control, some of the things that are bigger are where do people want to live. And in the United States, it's along the coasts, but it can be different geography. So just kind of pointing out the obvious there. Seoul is obviously a very preferential place to live and work, and therefore the most likely successful clusters will be in and around Seoul, as I'm sure that's not news to anybody here. And again, I say that because there are world-class academic institutions throughout the United States, in just about every state. So it's really not the academic institutions alone that create viable life science clusters. You need these other components, which do not exist everywhere in every country. Japan is the same way. There are very finite, distinct clusters. There are other academic institutions that are really well respected, but it's some of these other things that are populated in Yokohama, Kobe, Tokyo, et cetera, that make sense. Same thing in the United States. From my short time here in Korea, I see similar traits. There are a lot of biotech clusters beginning to form throughout the country, but some are likely going to be more successful than others. In my opinion, from all of these, it will be a lot of it based on where the highly educated workforce would prefer to live. So a little different take on cluster development. So I'm going to talk about each of these areas and glad to, again, discuss them later in the Q&A, but just as a little background for the United States biotech clusters, there are 3 top-tier world-class clusters: San Francisco, San Diego, and Boston. And yes, I work for Biocom California, so I listed them in that order. San Francisco, San Diego, Boston. Perhaps somebody might list them in a different order, but my apologies. We do compete a little bit with our friends in Boston. There are second-tier clusters: North Carolina, Research Triangle, Seattle, the Los Angeles, Orange County area, and the New York, New Jersey tri-state area. Those are the 7 main clusters. There are some developing in Houston, Atlanta, Washington, D.C. area, but the main ones are the ones I stated there. And each of them actually do share some very similar characteristics. The geography, the desirable place to live for highly educated people, absolutely. Every one of them has multiple world-class academic and research institutions that are really the engine of the innovation that comes out of these clusters. Dr. Kojimoto made a great point about how innovation is coming to market. It's not from early research of big companies, and we see that too. And so academic institutions and smaller biotechs are the key to innovation. And so you have to have some academic institutions. In San Diego, where we are headquartered, we are very fortunate not only to have UCSD, which is a world-class institution, but some of the top independent research institutions in the world, the Salk Institute, Scripps, Sanford Burnham, are world-class research institutes. An incredible amount of IP comes out of those. Related, because obviously a lot of tomorrow's workforce is coming out of top universities, having an access to a pipeline of talent, highly educated, well-trained in today and tomorrow's science, having them nearby and wanting to live there is critical. So I have been incredibly impressed with the universities and the talent in Korea, and so there is no shortage of talent, which is very important. But again, where they end up wanting to be is an important part of the equation. Government and elected official support. The support from the Korean government is light years ahead of the United States. It's incredible. Everybody that we've come across within the different departments of the Korean government have been incredibly supportive and thoughtful about growing this important industry. And we don't always have that in the United States. We kind of have to fend for ourselves. That part is definitely checked the box in Korea. It's really good. And obviously, it's not a question of if we should support this incredible industry, it's how do we do it. That is the question here in Korea. We're glad to help with that. Access to capital. I think there is a growing, strong private investment, life science specific investors in Korea, which is great. And obviously there's public markets and government investment as well. And in the United States, while the government is not always great with supporting for policy perspective, there is ample capital. The NIH, new programs like from the Biden administration, ARPA-H, which I believe Korea is attempting to perhaps have an ARPA-H starting next year. I believe those are discussions that are happening. That is an incredible idea, very helpful in the United States for funding. Service sector providers, we have incredible law firms and organizations like Thermo Fisher Scientific, Illumina, who provide tools for the industry. You have to have that connection. And again, they tend to focus in the same clusters that we are talking about here. And finally, most importantly, in my opinion, is a collaborative environment. So the one thing I will say about San Diego in particular, it is the most collaborative, the strongest collaborative environment for life science clusters that I've seen in the world. Everybody works together. Everybody is trying to cure cancer and solve Alzheimer's, and they are working together. There is always a little bit of competition over talent and resources, but the collaborative spirit is incredible, and it is something that should not be understated. everybody is competitive. Countries are competitive with each other. Companies are competitive with each other. It's natural. But if companies as a whole, as a mini cluster, if you will, can put down some of that and collaborate, that to me has been what has made San Diego in particular, a small city comparatively in the United States, be a world-class cluster, is that collaborative spirit. So there is really a lot to that part, and something that I know that the Koreans have, and that's good. That's a good thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these clusters. Just like Dr. Fujimoto said, about his clusters, we are proud of the California clusters. They are really, some of the best ones in the country and in the world. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but about the collaboration, one more comment. The support organizations that we have in the United States, Biocon California being one of them, really play a critical role in that collaboration. My organization puts on 200 events a year. We are very familiar with events like this. We produce 200 a year. I will say that the groups that we have come across in Korea are fantastic supporters. And so, just sorry if I'm bad with a name, but some of our friends that we have met even this year are very, very good at supporting these organizations, and it's going to bear fruit in the future. In no particular order, I apologize. So President Sundu Cha from KIDI, the KIDI folks do an incredible job supporting this industry. Chairman No from KPPMA has spent time with us in San Diego, and their organization does a great job with people. Vice Chair Shun Kyo Lee from Korea Bio, our friend we just met with yesterday. And of course, Director General Jung, who may have left the room, and Minister Cho also visited us in San Diego. I think between the government and K-Bio, K-Bic, KIST, KIST, Korea Bio, Bio Korea, K-Bio, all the different letters, they really do an incredible job supporting the companies, and that is important. Okay, so that is part of the collaborative environment and service sector support. So it takes some time to figure out exactly how to support companies, but I can tell you from our experience that these groups that we talked about are really doing a great job, and you're on your way towards building an incredible world-class cluster. So just a maybe special thanks to them. They've been very welcoming to us from Biocon California, but it's really cool to see how well they support these organizations. So that is a critical part of things. And obviously our friends, my friend Kyung Jung Kim and Nari Lim have also been incredibly accommodating to help connect us with some of these organizations. I think we will look forward to continuing to do that with you. So I know I will try to be brief here. I will not read this verbatim for you. Every year we do an economic impact report, which quantifies the economic activity derived from the life science industry in California. As you may know, California is the 4th largest economy in the world by itself, and in the life science market, it could potentially be the largest cluster if you put them all together. So all of this is available to you, and I'm happy to explain any of this. We actually have 90 pages of information on every city and county in California and what they produce. I will not go into that, but I will say that, like I mentioned before, the investment from the U.S. government via the NIH and the NSF, and I know there are equivalents here in Korea that are making investments. This is really the critical monetary foundation for life science success, is this non-dilutive funding from NSF and NIH. And so I will show. Okay, so for California, just for California, there was $5.41 billion of investment. So the most by any state. I believe it's close to 20% of the entire country's NIH investment went to California companies in 2022. You can see these are all in US dollars. The total labor income is $130 billion. And there are 1.2 million jobs created for the life science industry in California. So it's a very important industry for our state. And it also can explain why a lot of the patents, 1,661 patents in 1 year from California companies in the life science field is a lot of innovation coming out of California. And I will say that, actually I'll save it for the end. So you can see we have 500,000 direct employee and almost 1.2 million employed from kind of the service organizations and the support organizations. The report is lengthy, but it does dive into things like housing and transportation and where people like to reside. And so I am hopeful that this will be can be helpful information for those who are planning life science clusters here in Korea. There are some successful ones already. We were at Seoul BioHub yesterday, and there's some great activity already going on there. KBIC and some of these other ones we talked about. It's already starting some really good mini clusters within the Seoul area. And I know there's an innovation in GGP and beyond too. So hopefully these can be a blueprint for that. So this is a little bit overkill, detailed information, but I'm glad to discuss it further. Again, you can see the amount of funding for California is quite high. And so, oh, sorry, if I can go back. You can see it compared to the other major clusters that we talked about, Boston, New York, New Jersey area, and the Maryland, DC area. We're significantly higher in patents and funding and all that stuff. And I am from New York and New Jersey, so it's okay if I make fun of them a little bit. Okay. And so just briefly, I think everybody may know this in the room, but there are 4 major clusters in California. 4 of the top 20 in the country are in California. The biggest one in the entire country is the Bay Area. Genentech is the first ever big biotech company founded in the Bay Area. And basically, as Dr. Fujimoto talked about anchor tenants, Genentech is the mother of all anchor tenants for biotechs. They've been there a very long time, 40 years in the Bay Area, and there are thousands of companies that have circled Genentech over the years. So another important part of a successful cluster is an anchor, and really an industry anchor. And that's because of the talent and the IP that goes in both directions. An anchor is a critical part. In the Bay Area, it was Genentech. In San Diego, it was Hypertech, and on and on. Los Angeles is not quite as big, as you can see, but obviously a very big city, but not quite as big a life science cluster. Something a little different about our life science clusters is in the United States, they do not reside in the urban environments. So I think that's just a cultural thing. For every one of these, Boston, San Diego, San Francisco, they actually reside kind of on the outskirts of the city where there's more space for labs and for collaboration. Obviously, I think it's more cultural because people want to be in Seoul. That's the premier destination to be. So I don't think that an urban mini cluster is out of the out of the equation. I think it's very possible. I just think it's not quite the culture in the United States for that. New York City has tried, LA has tried, and it's not as successful as having a little more space right near the airports in the city and the talent that comes from that. And so this is a little bit about Biocom, but I will not waste your time with that. We are very similar to Korea Bio and some of the other organizations in how we support our members. The collaboration and the support is very important, and so my only advice is keep doing it. The organizations that are somewhere here in this room, and we will gladly work with you to better support Korean companies and build the bridges between Korea and the United States. We have been doing so in Japan for 12 years very successfully, and we are just starting out to do so in Korea, but everybody has been very welcoming. One final thing that Dr. Fujimoto mentioned about the biotechs being the key to innovation, and big pharma and big companies will just license or acquire to get that research. We see that in America too. So we had a meeting with KISS at Seoul BioHub yesterday, and they were asking, why won't big companies want to outsource research in Korea? We have all these talented people, which is very true. They do want to do that, but the way they want to do that is not to just have their own research, outsourced into South Korea. What they want to do is acquire and license innovative technology from biotech. So I would not say it's a failure in Korea that big pharma doesn't have big research arms here. It's just getting them knowledgeable about the incredible biotechs that are here. And that's happening. It's already happening. So Biocom California is committed to facilitating that, and I know many people in the room are as well. So we are looking forward to continuing to build bridges between the US and Korea, and specifically California. So I think I probably talked too much, so yeah, it's okay. Thank you. And